Hi, Amy. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Jane?
I'm good. I'm good. Guys, I want to welcome you back to Unpack Your Life. And today, of course, we're with another amazing lady here. Her name is Amy Colton. She is a wealth CFO, Chief Financial Officer, a certified divorce financial analyst, and a family law mediator. So I'm going to give this over to Amy and let her break it all down for you because everything that she is, we might need one day. Amy, let's go. How are
All right.
you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, a little bit about my story and my background is I spent many, many years in the corporate world and worked for somebody else. And in 2008, I lost my job and struggled to figure out what's next. And at some point in that journey, I decided, kicking and screaming, I must become an entrepreneur. But I wanted to do it very differently because now was my chance to create my next career. And so I went into the financial services industry, but I went in knowing a couple things. One, I wanted to devote my financial ability to help women, especially women going through major life transitions. And the reason is I came from a male dominated corporate job where when I started in 1970, in the 70s, I was in the computer industry and there weren't a lot of women in the computer scene. And I was on the technical side of the business. So in my office, which was 100 people in Detroit, downtown Detroit, the only other women in the office were the secretaries. And when they announced my promotion to management, I was going to manage 13 guys, probably some of which were
Oh,
twice my age. Some guy got up in front of 100 people and said, I will not work for a woman. And so that
no.
was the beginning of my journey as a manager at IBM. And I can tell you that a lot of times in my career, people would come to me and say, I don't believe that women should be here. This is not the place for women. And,
Wow.
I persevered. Um, I kept on doing what I was doing. But I will tell you, one of the most important things that ever happened in my life is one of the guys that worked for me came to me and he said, You know what? You're the best manager I ever had. And that gave me a really good feeling to know
Absolutely.
that despite the fact that people didn't want me to be there and people did put all kinds of roadblocks in my way, I was succeeding. To me, that was success. But
It's so funny. I'm just going to interject this. I hear
sure,
some emotion
yeah,
when you talk about it. I could feel
I can
that. You could
still,
still feel
I
that.
can still feel the day that this guy
I
came
could see
and
that, Amy.
and I experienced a lot of things because these men never had a woman manager ever in their whole life. I was the first one. I was a trailblazer. And so that was the beginning of my corporate journey. And so as a result, I ended up switching careers. I was with IBM for 20 years and I ended up switching careers about halfway through going from the technical side to the sales side. Now, when I went into sales, it was in New York City and about half my office were women. So it was a
Yeah.
very different experience going from downtown Detroit to New York City, going from the technical to sales. But anyway, that was my corporate journey. And as a result, I wanted to support women because again, in the financial services is another male dominant industry. And I didn't want, even if it was a couple, I wanted the woman to be part of the conversation. I didn't want to be it being a man talking to a man and leaving the woman out of the equation. So as a result, in my financial practice, all my clients are women, and some of them come attached to a man. And the point I make is that yes, I work with couples, I work with all kinds of people, but I just want to make
Absolutely.
sure that women get the questions answered and they are part of the conversation. And
Absolutely.
and so when I started doing this, there are three transitions that most women go through. There's actually six, but the three biggest one are death of a loved one, divorce, and retirement. And all three of them need financial planning. And
Right.
so I can't tell you how many clients, because I do focus on the divorce, and I focus on divorce from the financial and tax side, not from the legal side and not from the emotional side, because you need three. There's three components to divorce, and you got to address all three. Unfortunately, most people forget about the financial side. They think divorce, they're going to call their lawyer, or they start with a therapist because they're thinking about getting divorced and they want to make sure they have that emotional support. But for some reason, they forget they also need the financial support. And unfortunately, what do they fight about? Finances, money, all that stuff.
And you're right. You're right. Not all attorneys can handle that because not all attorneys
Exactly. I
are
can't, I mean,
equipped.
I've been doing this now for 8 years, and I can't tell you how many times they either give no advice or bad advice when it comes to finances and tax.
And not let's not forget about the money that they have to spend for the hours that, back and forth with finding out that they're not the ones that they need initially.
Exactly. And so what happened for me, it was really interesting, is there was a family law attorney who decided she didn't want to do divorce anymore. It was too stressful. And so what she decided to do is send her clients to me. And she said, if you can work things out with Amy, then you can come back to me and I'll file the paperwork, I'll write the divorce decree. And when I started doing it, I had this aha moment. Wow, this is such a better way to deal with the divorce journey. And so over the years, I've perfected that model because now I see what goes on in the attorney world, and
Right.
people are just much better. They need to basically look at everything that's in the marital estate and what they want from it and what their life post divorce is going to look like. And nobody's going to be a better guide for them than a financial person, because you need to look at your budget, you need to look at your
Right.
lifestyle, you need to look at what it's going to cost, and you need to know all this in order to split up the marital estate, because there's so many complexities that go into that they're not going to get from their attorney.
Let me ask you this. So when you're and I love I did some research on it on you, of course. I love the fact that you have, divorce made simple. It makes sense. Now you could take that if you saw it as an ad, or marketing uh, technique, and look at it and say divorce made simple. Now, how simple can divorce be? Because we know how traumatized most people are when they're going through divorce, especially if they don't like each other. It helps when they do like each other and they want to have a civil divorce, civilized and sit down with each other. I think I think you call it the kitchen
Table,
help,
the kitchen table
kitchen
divorce.
table, kitchen table divorce. It just made sense when I heard it. It rang true because I said, we break bread, we have dinner, we talk about things, we're happy. Most of the time when we're filling our bellies, we're happy. So that, as soon as I saw the title of that, I went, oh, that makes sense. And then when I looked into it and listened to what you had to say about it, as far as mediation was concerned, I thought, well, yeah, it's basically sitting down saying, what do you both want? We don't have to fight.
Hmm.
We can come to some type of understanding, but you have to get there first. And
Right.
the first thing we think, and even before I met you or read anything about you, if I thought about divorce, the first thing I would think is I need a divorce attorney. They're going to help me out. Why should I go see a financial analyst? The divorce attorney should be able to help me with that, and hopefully have that person on his team to figure out how we're supposed to divide or separate these assets. But when I sat back and I looked at everything, I went, wow, she's right. You got to talk about it before you bring someone in to separate it.
And you need to know what I know. You need to know what you want.
What you want.
You know what's realistic, and you also need to know how that's going to manifest to your next chapter of your life. Like, because most women, when they go through divorce, their lifestyle changes dramatically, and they
100.
gotta be mentally aware, but they also need to make sure that any decisions that they're making today is going to be in the best interest of their future.
Because they're unpacking their life. And
Yeah.
that's what this show is about. So it's so in alignment with what you do and basically what I'm doing, speaking to women about how do you go about unpacking your life after being with someone for 20 years, 16 years, 12 years, or whatever that may be, because now you have to unravel and undo everything you have created together. And
Exactly.
how does that look for you? The emotional part, the trauma part, the physical part, where you're going after this, can you even go? Then we have the part of self doubt, self mistrust. I mean, ego. all of that. So my thing is, I think personally, you need to unpack frequently and not wait until you're here and burn the house down. Because then there's no mediation. There, the attorneys come into play. They want to get paid no matter how many hours you spend with them. They're just clocking up the hours. Someone like you come in, let's sit down at the table and let's talk about this. Where are you going? What are you looking for in your life? How do you want to live in your next life? Can what we're asking for support that? And if not, how do we talk to this other person that you're asking all of this from? Or do
Yep.
you both decide? Because it might be him who needs that because you're the breadwinner.
Right.
So
And typically, and not always, a lot of times, a lot. So I have like two paths when I deal with people. Now, if the couple's willing to come to the kitchen table, then we do mediation and we work with both parties. See, I can, as a lawyer, they can only work with one party because they represent them. But I'm what
right,
they call a financial neutral. I give advice. I don't represent either party if I'm working with a couple. I just give them advice about what the consequences of what they're talking about can mean from a tax standpoint. Hey, if you're going to sell the marital home, you got to know there may be taxes, and you need to
right,
know what that's going to look like. Um, if you're going to take a 401k as opposed to the house, you got to understand that that's going to be taxed in the future. So it's not worth, say, 100k. It's worth something less than 100k because it's an asset that's going to be taxed. Even though it's not going to be taxed during the divorce, it is going to be
right,
taxed in the future.
right.
So all those things need to get into the conversation about it. Now, sometimes I work with just one party and it's usually the woman, because they never handled finances before and they're not comfortable making these decisions. Now, in a case like that, I don't do mediation because I'm only working with one party. But
Right.
you still need to understand what's in the marital estate, what they're entitled to, and the budget has to be created for what life's going to look like afterwards. So we know what to ask for because we need to know that we can support our life post divorce.
So let me ask you, what does that look like when you're handling both at the kitchen table, so to speak?
Well, it really depends on how willing people are. It is an emotional time. you know
Absolutely.
it's kind of interesting because if you both parties are using attorneys, there's some things, and one of the reasons it can get very expensive is when you start using attorneys, you're no longer having a conversation with your ex soon to be ex partner. You're delegating that to the attorneys.
Right.
These are having those conversations, and they're going back and forth between you and your soon to be ex and the two attorneys. And that takes a long time. And it's also very expensive because every time you have a conversation, you get charged.
Mhm.
By
And it's
choice,
third-party information.
pardon? Yeah. So what I try to do, and then if they can't come to an agreement, then they send you to mediation. And they try to get mediation done in one day. I have a
Oh,
very different model. We do mediation up front. We do it day one. We collect all the documents, we do all the financial discovery, we put everything in a spreadsheet and look at everything that's in the marital estate. And then we talk about how we're going to divide it, what's fair, what each party wants. And typically, I do those in an hour and a half to 2 hour sessions because at some point somebody gets emotional and we need to calm down. We need to think about it. If they haven't hired an attorney, they need to maybe get an attorney's opinion. Doesn't mean you have to put down a $10,000 retainer. You can see an attorney and talk to an attorney and get advice on an hourly basis. But a lot of my clients, we will work on putting together what I call that divorce financial plan, which is we gather all the documents, we look at everything in the estate, and then we look at who wants what. Whether I do it with one individual or both individuals, the only difference is when we're doing mediation, both parties are in the same Zoom room. They're not in the same physical room, but they're in the same Zoom room. So they're having the conversation and the going back and forth. So it's a different mediation style because we're doing it in incremental steps. and
Right.
B, we're having the conversation together. Most mediators will put you in a room separately, go back and forth, and try to get you to come to an agreement. And they try to do it in one day. So it's very, very different philosophy on mediation as well as how to divide things up. People who do this will get to the finish line a lot quicker. It
Hmm.
will be a lot less expensive. My goal is to get it done in 90 days, where the traditional route is 12 to 18 months. Very
Right.
big difference on the time frame. Very big difference on the amount of money, because typically I calculate that traditional divorce will be at least $55,000. Um, Although I've seen it go way higher than that.
Way higher.
Way higher than that. And I don't charge hourly. I charge a flat fee for my service. And so we put together the plan and we get as far along with the plan as we can before we bring in the attorneys.
You have such a unique style. I have never heard anyone sit down and talk about divorce and being able to sit with someone or two parties, zoom it out. And I think as females, we always feel, or we would feel, intimidated if we don't hear or see what's going on with the other, because we're always going to think if that's a male attorney, he's going to be on the veer side of the male, and if it's a female attorney, she's going to have to stay straight down the middle. Here it is, which I love about you, and it seems very authentic, that one, you support women, you want them to have a seat at the table and hear exactly what's going on and know what's happening while they're going through such a traumatic, situation with their other party. Like I said, if they were civil to each other, that's something different. Some men will be like, give her what she wants, and I just want to be free. Some women are like, well, I'll just take this and the kids and I'll go this way. But it doesn't happen that easy. I mean, I remember the movie War of the Roses, right?
Mhm.
So that was really interesting. But I think you have a very unique way of dealing with this type of situation because of your heart and your authenticity and wanting to support women. And when I read about you, you genuinely said, listen, they need a seat at the table to understand what's going on. And I'm that person for them. So I think you're a great advocate for women when it comes to divorce, and also stepping outside of that corporate world and finding your unique style and seeing how it manifested. Taking the 14 years to build this business is a wonderful thing. And we do, as women, we do need to stand by each other and support each other, because it's only us. And you did make you said it's something interesting. You said they don't have managers. Well, they forgot they had mothers. Women, we're managers from
Mhm.
day one. We brought them here. So they forget that. And all of that goes out the window too, because if you think about it, you would hope that they would think something about that. This is a woman, but life is different now. Life is completely different. We don't have those traditions and those foundations don't follow through life. But I want to go back to you, how you decided that your path needed to be different, your purpose. Because there was a question I asked, and I loved your answer. I asked, what did you have to unlearn? And you blatantly, I didn't have to unlearn anything. It wasn't about me unlearning, it was about me taking on the fact that I had it inside of me and I could forge forward and create this. What was that like for you?
Well, there's so many times in my life where I did that, and people would say to me, "You can't do that." And I go, "Well, I'm going to." I remember this is probably one of the first times I was just graduating from college, and I was in my senior year of college. I was an art history major, and I decided to go to graduate school in business, and I told my roommate that that's what I was going to do. She looked at me and she goes, "You've never even taken a business course." I said, "I know, but that's what I'm going to do." And I it's just one of those things when you set your mind to something, you and that's what you want to achieve, you get there. And so I ended up graduating from college and I took the business boards and I was scored very, very low in the business boards. But I was determined to get my MBA. So I went to summer school. I didn't even take time off after I graduated. I went and immediately started taking courses in the MBA program. And then when the results of my test came in, I went to the dean of the college and I said, I really want to get into graduate school here. I'm taking some courses this summer. And he looked at my scores, which were very low. And he looked at the fact that I had just graduated magna cum laude from University of Michigan. And he goes, these two don't equate. I'll tell you what, you get a B or better in those courses you're taking this summer, I'll let you in the program. And that's how I got into graduate school. But I
Wow.
was determined. And I will tell you, there were two things that I've done in my whole life that were hardest things I've ever done. And my first year of graduate school was one of them, because there were 9 areas that I had to take the undergrad equivalent of in order to start taking the graduate classes. 9 areas: finance, accounting, economics, statistics, business law, you name it. Everything except algebra, because I had taken an algebra course as
Oh,
an undergrad.
I wouldn't have gone through.
But I was every single day, I was studying 24/7. I was always behind. I and I was always afraid I was going to fail, but I never did. I ended up with a B plus or something, but it was really that first year was so freaking hard. It's like, and the other thing that the second hardest thing I ever had to do was get my Series 7, which was one of the licenses I had to get to be a financial advisor, because that is a 7-hour exam, and it is one of the other hardest things I've ever had to do. So those are the two hardest things. But when you're determined to do something, you have to overcome
Right.
those obstacles.
Yeah, because the fear could be so scary to you. I mean, even me with this unpack your life and my situation and what happened in my life, and I had to totally unpack. And I thought, wow, thank God. And you said another thing, and I'll bring that up after. I said to myself, thank God I was in the position to walk and not even think about anything, because a lot of women aren't in that position, and a lot of women, like you said, don't handle their own finances. I got married when I was an older woman, so I had lived my life somewhat traveling the world and doing my own financing, buying my own car, buying my own house, and the whole 9 yards. And my first job was not in real estate, but I see a lot of what you're talking about, even when we're purchasing or selling a house and there's a situation. It could be the divorce, it could be the passing of, the parents, and the children come into play and they don't want anything to do with the estate. And now we're all over the place with trying to sell the house and handle the attorney or handle the trustee. I mean, it could run the whole gamut. And that's a very interesting thing when you're dealing with people on a daily basis in reference to their finances. And one party really has no idea what's going on because all they did was live their lives through their husband, or, well, I can't say too much, through their wives, because we know it's always the other way around, and just sit back and take life in. And then when it hits them very hard because they don't know which way to go or which way is up. I remember one woman told me when they were divorcing and we were selling their estate, she said, I've never even written a check, Jane. And I thought I was going to fall off my chair because I didn't realize that even existed today. That goes back to my mother's era. And I've seen that happen where my mother is the one who's taking care of all the finances, and my dad is the one who's out there working hard. But she handled the finances and handled, the budget and so forth. And then they never got divorced, so I never saw anything like that. But I find it very interesting when I run up against women that really don't know what to do. And I didn't think that existed, to be honest with you.
Well, let me tell you a story. This is interesting because somebody asked me if I could speak on financial abuse, and I never
Hmm.
heard the term financial abuse. And I started thinking, and
Neither have I. This
I
is my first.
thinking about all these situations that I've experienced that really constitute financial abuse. So I'm going to tell you about one of them because it really is something that's very prevalent, happens all the time, and yet we don't hear much about it. But
Wow.
this was a situation that I worked on a couple of years ago, and this was actually a case that took that in California. And California, now what's really interesting when you're dealing with divorce, because I work all over the country, the kind of work I do can be done anywhere. But what varies from state to state is alimony, child support, and child visitation. Those are the things that vary from state to state.
Okay.
This particular couple lived in California, and California is a very pro alimony state.
I wonder why.
So it's probably one, I think California and Massachusetts, those are probably the two best states for getting alimony. I live in Texas. Texas is the worst state because it doesn't exist in Texas. But anyways, this was a case about alimony. The wife was the primary breadwinner. The husband wanted $10,000 a month in alimony from the wife for the rest of his life. And this was only about mediation. This was only about mediation because they didn't have any assets. They had a lot of debt, and even though she made a lot of money, they didn't have any assets. So he was not a stay-at-home dad. He also worked. He also made money, but he was not the primary breadwinner. But that's what he felt he was entitled to because he was married for 20 years. Now, I reached out to two attorneys in LA to see what their opinion was of this case, and neither one of them thought he would get $10,000 the rest of his life.
Okay.
But he was so determined that this is and I told him, I said, I reached out to two attorneys. I suggest you go get a second opinion too, because the court's only giving you temporary $4,000 a month. They're not giving you $10,000. They're only giving you $4,000 as temporary alimony. And every attorney that I've talked to, and I've only talked to two, but I suggest you go talk to one, and he wouldn't do it. So after 6 months of negotiating, and the conversation every month was the same,
Wow.
I finally told him, I can't do this anymore. We're done. But the thing that I discovered about him, because the wife, she was a physician, she made about $500,000 a year, but she let him do all the financial stuff. And he was the worst person in the world to be doing financial. But she was the mom. She was the breadwinner. She focused on what she was good at, and she let him do that. And there was a time he set up an LLC, and the LLC lost $80,000. And I said to her one day, I said, do you know he set up an LLC in your name and lost $80,000 in the LLC? And she said, I have no idea. Now, this is not uncommon, but I can't tell you how many people sign a tax return and have no idea what's in the tax return. And so I told them, I said, we're done. And then I told her, listen, you need to hire an attorney. This is an alimony case. You need to hire a good attorney because the attorney that you have is not doing the job for you. And if you want to end up paying alimony for the rest of your life, if you don't, you're going to have to hire a really good attorney. So she did, and which I found her really the best attorney. Unbelievable. She knew the law. She was aggressive. She was fair, and she understood money. It's very rare to find somebody that good, but she was good. Right. She was also expensive, but and my client kept saying to me, I can't believe I'm spending this much money. I said, you have two choices. You either pay the attorney today or you pay him for the rest of your life. You choose. And so it ended up that because they didn't have any assets, he took the only asset they had, which was her 401k, which is about $200,000. He got the $200,000 401k, but she didn't have to pay a dime in alimony.
Because for the rest of his life, he could live forever.
And he didn't understand all the things that he was doing that, quite honestly, the guy should have ended up in jail. There was so much fraud in this case, but that's not my job. My job was to get her out of this mess. And when you look at the financial abuse that I uncovered in just that case, first of all, every single dime that he made, he wrote off. He said, I make zero because I made $150,000, but my expenses are $150,000. So I made zero. And anytime I tried to find a receipt to support it or any documents to support that he spent that kind of money, I couldn't find it. So I'm telling you, there's so much financial abuse out there, and people don't realize it because typically the women, and in this case, she was a high earner, but she didn't handle the money. People don't understand a lot of time finances and taxes.
That's interesting that, she's a high earner and she's out there and she's working and she sees her paychecks and she knows what's going on and then she just hands it over to someone.
Hmm.
Because I think we all know our relationships. It's a we either put them on the back burner because we can't deal with them because life is lifing around us and we're, running from here and there and trying to raise kids if you do have them. That's a lot. For me, I don't know. I'm kind of an alpha male, an alpha female. I couldn't imagine turning my money over to anyone but the powers that be, like an accountant, like, someone that financial analyst to handle my money. But I guess, different strokes at that point because I just couldn't imagine that, especially when you're an intelligent person and you're doing your business, you know where you stand pretty much in your life. We basically, I think if we're authentic enough with who we are and where we are in our lives with our partners, we should know better.
We should, but we don't always. And I'll tell you,
No,
I'll tell you what happened to me, but it blows my mind today that this was me, but this was me 20 plus years ago. I was married to a guy and we didn't share finances, okay? So,
right.
I made money, I filed my own tax return. He made money, he filed his own tax return. I had no idea. Now, this is way before I became a financial advisor, but I had no idea how much money he made. I did not know how much money he made. I was married to the guy, and yes, we kept finances separately, which is not unusual for a third marriage.
No, it's not unusual. No.
I had no idea. I didn't even ask the question. And yet I was married to him. So,
Was that the trust factor?
was that a trust factor? It didn't even
Yes.
occur to me because I managed my money. I dealt with my money separately, but it never even occurred to me to ask him that question. And I was married to the guy for 4 years.
Wow.
I had no idea what he made. I had no idea what his net worth was. It was just the way we ran our lives.
It's the way you operate at the time. Listen, I
And
got the same.
now that I know what I know, I would never have done that. But that was 25 years ago. So I was in a different headspace. But
Yes.
being a financial advisor and dealing with this all the time, of course, my worldview is very, very different today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had the same kind of situation as a real estate agent and broker. I mean, I sold my house and it's because somebody was in my ear saying, "You're never going to go back there. What are you doing? Why are you even, paying money for it?" But I wasn't because I had renters in there and they were good renters. And when it came about and I had the money in my hand to actually pay off the house and not even think about it, I sold it. And I to this day, I think, what were you thinking about? Were you so wrapped up in everything that was going on, you didn't even use your own intelligence, what you do on a daily basis, to know that you could just take that equity because the house is done, you have it, it's yours, and purchase something else and keep it moving? You took it and you sold it and you know what you paid for it. You know it's worth 10 times as much. And I thought sometimes we get so wrapped up into life that we can't think clearly. And that's when things start unraveling.
Yeah.
Because the moment you get the time to sit back and go, wait a minute, this isn't working for me anymore, that's when your heart starts beating really fast and you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this? And then who do I need to support me with this? And then the fear comes in.
Hmm.
And when the fear hits you, you're not sure which way to go. So then you either sit in it or you take flight. And taking flight is usually not the easiest thing to do, but you have to do something. You have to say, screw it, and say, I'm going to rise again like a phoenix, or I'm going to sit here and just turn to ashes. So you have to figure that out one way or the other, you know, and you have to be true to yourself and sit in your truth, because sometimes that is so hard for us to do, you know, to even walk in our truth. And I can see that happening, you know, with you when you said, I didn't even, the question never even thought about, never even came up. But the reality of that is we're partners, even though they say the first ship that goes down is the partnership. It just depends. That's the saying. The first ship that goes down is the partnership. But if you get a good partner, and that's going to lead me to my next question, because I love what you were saying about your relationship and, you know, your partner, when I read about things, how he was there for you and made you realize certain things about your life. But I think that's what happens to us. We don't walk in our, you know, our true authentic self because we're afraid of what the consequences may be. But if we realize the truth and keep it unique to who we are, life would be so much easier for us.
Hmm.
But it's not that easy. It's difficult. But like I said, this is a segue into my next question with you. You talked about your 5 pillars, which I love, and you stepped into a few of them as we were speaking. The first one was determination. You know, you said, I was determined to step out of that uncomfortable situation with those men because I realized that they didn't really know what they were talking about because they were bad managers and they forgot that women, we are the managers. We rule the world. I don't care what anybody say. I probably get slammed for this, but we rule the world. We bring them here. We teach them. We help them grow.
Hmm.
And then we continuously help them grow by marrying them and giving them support because they're very insecure beings. But we're all insecure, but for me, I think they're more insecure. And they have a lot on their head too. So I'm not going to sit here and slam them that way. But they do forget that we are the managers,
Hmm.
period.
Yeah.
Full stop. So when you talk about determination, you know, and thinking out of the box, being creative and the culture and core values, I knew exactly what you were talking about because that is what gets you to the next place. If you don't have that vision and then you have the support and the partner to help you carry that out or the team, it
Hmm.
goes nowhere.
Hmm.
And that's how I knew you and I had so much in common because when you mentioned, you know, Gino Wickman, I was like, oh, there it is, traction. She got it. I used that to build my brokerage. I took traction and went through every step, and it opened my eyes so much when I saw that
Hmm.
because you're right. In anybody, I mean, in anything in life, there's always the visionary,
Hmm.
the person that sees the big picture. But that big picture means nothing if you don't have the support around it.
True.
The people that sees the big picture with you and want to get there. I always tell people it takes a lot of people to make one person successful.
Hmm.
You know, and the climb, you know, the chase of success. It's not in the chase. It's in the ambition. It's in the believing in yourself and understanding that you're unique within yourself and the world is waiting for you. And that's what happened with you, Amy. The world was waiting for you. The women were waiting for you. And they're still waiting for you. And a lot of them won't know who you are. I mean, the kitchen table divorce, it's so clear.
Hmm.
Divorce made simple. It's so clear. Why are we fighting? You
Right.
know, we spent 20 years together, so called loving each other. But now we want to separate, and you all of a sudden hate me. You don't want to help me. You don't want to support me. You don't want to still be a friend. I mean, if that person is abusive, physically abusive, and then we got mental abuse too,
Yeah.
and now financial abuse. When you peel back those layers from people, they're not who they say they are. But the funny thing about that is the whole time you were there, they showed you who they were.
Yeah.
You just didn't open your eyes.
Oh, yeah. That happens a lot, even to me.
Even to me, even to me. I mean, I haven't even shared my story, you know, and I will share my story with the world, but my story is just not that deep because I'm a strong woman. When I felt like my foundation was being chipped at by verbally being abused, not understanding what was happening to me, and being such a strong person with a strong foundation, with a mother who pushed me forward with everything I ever wanted to do, and a father who supported me. I just didn't get it, and I didn't understand why it was happening to me. And I just sat there one day and said, okay, I got to do something about this. It's chipping away at everything I believe in that's right for me. So Jane, you're the imposter. You're living an you're living as an imposter. You're being successful. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing, but you're really not doing what you're supposed to be doing to be happy in this world. And that is the most important thing. Happiness and family. You can't pick and choose them, but you damn sure can try to like them, right? Because they're not going anywhere. Friends and people that don't mean you any good, you can check them off each and every time. And not everybody's strong enough to look at life that way.
That's true. I had a situation that happened many, many years ago. There was a woman who was my friend. She was my neighbor, and she was in a very unhappy marriage. She was not happy, but she was not willing to do anything about it because she was so afraid that if she left her husband, she could not live the lifestyle she wanted to live. So she stayed in this unhappy marriage
Oh,
her whole life. And
oh,
I looked at her and I said, I could never do that. I could not be that person. And I never forgot that situation because I see that a lot in the work that I'm doing. These people,
absolutely.
these people have stayed in marriages way too long, or you see that now because gray divorce, which is divorce after the age of 50, is the fastest growing area of divorce in the world, not just in the United States, but in the world. And people
Wow.
ask me all the time why. And I think it's because the kids are gone. That was their reason to stay together.
That's
And
right.
that combined with the fact that now they get up and they go, I got 20 more good years or more or less or whatever that number is. And I don't want to spend it with this person because I want the next 20 years of my life to be about what I want, what makes me happy. And this
That's right.
isn't it. So I always felt bad for that woman. She was beautiful. She was young enough to move on. I knew she would be successful, whatever she did, but she didn't know that.
Right.
And she stayed in that
She didn't know herself.
marriage.
She didn't have the strength nor the foundation, probably didn't have the support either. Or she was just looking at everything with rose-colored glasses, thinking that was the best thing for her. What is her, like you said, what is her life going to be? I had a great lifestyle, trust me on that. And no, all I could say is no, I don't care about this lifestyle because I know what I had prior to this. So I know I can do it again. I'll walk away with nothing and not ask for anything but my happiness. And that's the only thing I could look forward to. And my God, when the pandemic came, I was like, shit, I'm stuck. I couldn't even call a friend and say, I'm coming to Italy. Can I come and stay with you for a year? I need some time. Nothing. So that was another 4 or 5 years of sitting in that. It was like grief. A part of you is dying and you cannot do anything to save it. And as I was chipped away at, and it's funny, I had this conversation with the person I'm talking about. The remorse is always there. It's after, and I need another chance. And all those years, you had more chances and more chances. You never thought about it. Now that, you never miss it until it's gone. And then you try to clean up the mess. Well, that depends on the person too.
Mhm.
Once I had the strength and the mental capacity, it was a no-brainer for me. That was it. And I had to bring that alpha female out of me that I was prior to that, because that's what you need to be when you're in the world of business and finance and especially real estate, that too, because you run up against a lot of situations where you have to have your game face on at all times, no matter how you feel, especially in the world of business with men.
Mhm.
I was in the entertainment business at one time, and I remember a situation where I was in the boardroom and we were having a meeting, and it was the record label, it was the agents. I was a personal manager. So, but what they didn't understand is I was more than a personal manager. I was their confidant. I was their psychologist. I was their, assistant. I was everything to this person. And they were not making any decisions without me. So I sat there while the conversation went this way. And I just sat there and I thought, oh my God, they're not even talking to me. And it was all men.
Mm-hmm.
The record label from LA, the other manager from England, the agent from CAA and CIA and all the other A's. And I'll never forget them speaking like I wasn't there. And finally, I spoke up and I said, who's in the United States in New York City 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And they all looked at each other. I said, I am. So I think the decision and the understanding will come from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my client. I said, what do you think? And she said, yes, I will not make a decision without her.
Good for her.
And that was it. I had to step up to the plate because I was scared. I have to tell you, I sat there thinking, oh my God, this is my first time being in a boardroom with all men talking about the female talent that I have. I know my relationship with her. Will she stand up for me while I'm here? So all of this is going on while the conversation is going on, but nobody's speaking to me. And here it is. I felt like I was the most significant person in the room. And finally, something hit me from the back of my head and said, you better open your mouth. And I did. And we got exactly what we wanted. So, being fearful, having fear is okay because that'll push you to do things that sometimes you'll never even dream of doing. Even with this Unpack Your Life, my podcast here, I'm being vulnerable and I'm sharing things that I never thought I would share with people that I don't even know, that probably don't even care. But as women, I think we could all, and I love what you say, you're continuously learning from your clients, from your family, from the people you're engaging with on a daily basis. You must be open to take in that information and then dissect it and use what's good for you when those times come about. Because we have to learn from each other. That's the only way we correct these things.
Correct.
So I think what you're doing is amazing, and being out there for women and taking that stand saying, you men, you really don't know what you're doing. I built this business now. I see where your mistakes were. You probably at that point, you're missing empathy. You don't care really. It's a woman on the other side. You look at us as the weaker sex and we don't know what we're doing. We don't need that much money. Why should we fight for you as much? But then when you have another female sitting across the table from you, you're pretty much looking at each other like, I got you, sis. Don't worry. I'm here for you. I'm not going to let them do what they want to do because I'm just like you and I could be you sitting there one day. And that's what I love about you. I believe your authenticity that you bring to your business and your job, you really advocate for the women. And you see the mistakes on a daily basis. And I believe that you put them in front of them so they can understand. I don't think you catastrophize anything in reference to this business. I think you really looked at everything from what I read about you and said, you know what? There's a place for me in this world. I can walk away from this and be confident that I'm going to make it. And smart. I love what you said. And smart. I mean, it's nothing like a smart woman, right? And I love what you said. I want to change the dynamics. I want to change the dynamics of how this is done. And I went, wow, she's really amazing. So I'm honored to speak to you because I don't meet a lot of women like you. And you've been out here longer than me. So you've seen it all. You've seen it from the 70s where women, burn your bra. Are you kidding? They don't even wear them now. The young girls, they don't even wear the bras today. So forget about burning it. We're standing and we're standing strong, but there's still some of us out there that need us. Mm-hmm. And we need to be that sister to them or that, whatever you want to call us. Mm-hmm. I think you're doing great. And I think after, listening to you and reading things about you, I think when you go into business, you bring your authentic self and you really care and you have empathy. And that's important today.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I thank you for that. I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you have a very strong fortitude. And for my listeners out there, if any of you ladies are going through this situation of divorce, Amy's someone you should reach out to. And before we leave here, she'll tell you where to find her. And you should look into her kitchen table divorce, which I love. Divorce Made Simple, which makes sense. And she's going to save you money. And there's a lot of women out here that don't know where to go. I can recall a couple years back, someone called me and said, "Do you know a really good divorce attorney?" I said, "Oh my God, you're getting divorced?" That's the first thing she wants, a divorce attorney. I mean, I don't even think they know, people like you exist much.
That's probably true. And that's really why I'm trying to get the word out that this is an option that you might not have considered and known about, because I just think that the traditional family law business is broken, the industry is broken. And, I try to do what I can do. And I will be coming out with a book in June called The Kitchen Table Divorce, which goes through my whole process and some of my client stories. But I'm really determined to get people to know that this is an alternative to the traditional path.
Fantastic. How did you get turned on to Gino Wickman?
I was in a mastermind group with one of the local chambers here, and we would we'd meet every month, and somebody had to do a review, and that was somebody had chosen that book. And after they gave the book review, I actually read the book and became intrigued with it and have been following it very religiously since then.
And have you seen real growth from it?
Oh my God, yes. The other thing that I utilize, which is really interesting, it works really well with Gino's philosophy, but it's not part of the, it's a separate business, but the two work really good. This is called the self journal. And what it is that you track your activities during the quarter. So with Gino, you set up your goals for the year and then you break them down into quarters. Well, this is a notebook
Right.
for your
Right.
quarter, for each quarter. And I use one each quarter and I look at like we're coming up to second quarter. What am I going to accomplish second quarter? What are the things that I need to do? So we look at the quarter, we look at the week, and we look at every single day, the activities we have to do to make sure we're on track to meet those goals.
That's pretty cool because what you're doing is kind of breaking them down into small steps because people get overwhelmed when they see the big picture or
Right.
even
And
half of that picture.
it's one thing to say I want to accomplish this goal, but it's what are the activities I need to do every single
That's right.
day to get there.
To
And
get there.
so that's really the two go really hand in hand, even though they weren't meant to go hand in hand, they go because this is just an empty notebook that you put in all your metrics.
Well, life is a strategy, isn't it? You
Yeah.
need a strategy.
Yeah.
And I remember telling someone when I took a test, and I don't remember what that test was, but I said to someone, I said, if I had not gone to school, if I had not learned discipline to study, to really sit down and research and do study, and I enjoy it. I actually enjoy learning. A lot of people don't. A lot of people can't even figure it out. I know for a fact that I would have never passed
Mhm.
those tests that I took.
Mhm.
And it was because I had the discipline. I understood how to research and own the research because you could read something, it can go right out of your head.
Right.
You have to know that when you're researching anything or you're trying to learn something, there's a depth that goes along with that. It's
Mhm.
not just surface. You have to take it in, and there's a part of believing what you're reading too,
Right.
and then engaging with someone else about it, not just taking it in and, oh, I'm going to do this, because then you have to practice it.
Mhm.
And as they say, practice makes perfect, right? Let me ask you this. What do you think women don't talk about much and they should?
There are a lot
What
there
conversations
are a
do you
lot of things there's a lot of things they don't talk about that they should. It's usually money and sex.
right? You either don't have it or you're not getting enough of it, right?
Right, exactly.
They both go hand in
In
hand.
both categories, yes.
Yes. Is there something you wish they would talk about more besides those two
I
categories?
think people need to look at what they want to accomplish in life, what their life goals are. Life goals and financial goals are so intertwined and
That's right.
really, really important to understand both because they go hand in hand. And so I think it's really important to really look at what you what you what you want to accomplish for your life, but also, I do a lot of financial planning, whether it's divorce or just my clients who are not going through divorce. But it's really, really important to understand what's important to them, right? What's here, what their life goals are. And I think too many people in my industry don't focus on that.
This is true. What does authenticity mean to you?
I think a lot of times it means showing people who you are, being vulnerable, letting them know who you really are, that you're a person that has a lot of experiences, and I like to share my experiences because I've learned lessons from my experiences. One of the things that for me has been really, really interesting and new is that I I never had children, but I'm with a man who had 3 children and now 2 grandchildren. And his grandchildren have been a huge part of my life because I learned from them and they learned from me. I'm not just a grandmother or a step grandmother. I am a mentor. And I truly believe in mentorship. At
I
any
do too.
stage of your life, you need to learn from others, but you also look to others to learn from as well.
That is so true. You know, I love being a mentor also. I'm a mentor when it comes to young agents, sharing with them about business.
Hmm.
I just had an agent that I shared something with, and the light bulb didn't go off at all. A listing was taken away from her and given to another agent. The owner asked that she share the pictures because her pictures were really nice and allowed the place to be in good light. But the owner asked the agent to ask the other agent, which you would think they could collaborate without ego.
Yeah. Well, you would hope. You would hope, but it rarely happens.
And the agent that lost the listing said no. He offered to pay her for it, and I couldn't believe my ears. When she told me, and I shared with her, I said, you made one of the biggest mistakes of your life and you don't even realize it. You took it personal because the listing was taken away from you. And here it is, you met a new agent that came into your network that you had no idea who they were, who could help you, and you still work for the person that took the listing from you because you managed the building. Did you not think there would be some ramifications from this? Did you not think something would happen from this? Because that owner could have called you or texted you and said, thank you for your business and thank you for, helping me out. And I no longer need you to manage.
Hmm.
Just on that one thing. I said, because all of this, you got to connect the dots. That agent could support you. You're still manager. Why wouldn't you want to see the building in great light by sharing your pictures? You still work for that owner and you took it personal because you lost the money you thought you were going to get if you had sold the place. You didn't get the job done. It's not a reflection of you, it's the timing in the market. And what you told me was the owner said to you, it was not a reflection of you. They needed to sell their building and they needed a bigger network, and your network wasn't big enough. You didn't take that as a positive, you took it as a negative. I said, in our business, we have to collaborate without ego. You forgot who the boss was. The boss was your customer. You took it personal and you ran with it. And here it is. You still have to deal with your customer. And this agent has told him that you said no to the pictures. And he even offered to pay for them. What would you have done with the pictures? You still could use it. You bought the building for the owner. So you can still market yourself by saying you bought this building and you're marketing it and it's a part of your track record. He's going to use it when he sells the building. He could still use the pictures. So you didn't lose there. I said he wasn't going to do anything malicious. I just don't understand, why would you say no? And she said, oh my God, I never thought about that part. I said, because you put yourself above your customer. And I said, in our business, the customer is always right, period. You're dealing with someone's large asset, which is going to help you, if you sell it, make more money than you had. And apparently you needed it because you got so upset and you took it personal. Because if you didn't need it, you probably wouldn't have took it that personal. You probably would have thought, the guy's going to pay me anyway. I'm still working for the customer. But you went rampant. And I said, you didn't even think. Oh my God, what should I do, Jane? What should I do? I said, what you should do. I'm going to tell you what I would do. I would call that agent and say, I have no idea, life was going on. I was upset or whatever. Or just send the pictures over to him and say, you know what? I don't even know what I was thinking. Here are the pictures, and leave it at that. I said, because if you go into some large explanation, you're going to show face.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. We forget. We don't really.
Well, we forget, and we also act emotionally. Sometimes something triggers us. And I never make a
Absolutely.
decision when I'm in that state. I have to come down at least 24 hours before I make a decision.
Yeah, you just need, can I call you back?
Hmm.
Can we speak in another
Yeah.
hour or two? And figure it out. Call somebody. I don't know what you have to do. They say you have a phone call, you can call somebody for help. But she didn't. So the mentoring part is very important, and sharing that with her, I opened her eyes to something else.
Hmm.
And she said, I never thought about that part of this situation. And I thought, well, the next time you will. I said, because this is what separates top agents from agents that never make it.
Yeah.
What I said was, this is what separates the big dogs. So I said, so you want to be one of them one day so you can secure your financial life. And here it is, you're thinking small.
Right.
But the other day she got the picture and she called me back. She said, thank you so much. I never even entertained that. So, being a mentor is also taking a back seat and watching the mistakes happen so you can help them correct it. And, it's like my dad used to say, you can only lead the horse to the well, right? You can't make him drink the water.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's it. And I wanted to ask you one more question, one more thing. I asked you about what you think women should talk about more, and definitely. And I think the financial abuse thing is something women should start chattering to each other,
Hmm.
kind of hovering. And have you heard about this? And think about this? Do you think about this? I think that's a great conversation to have. What's one moment in your life where you felt like you just got punched in the face with life?
Well, it actually happened last year. Um, I had been working with somebody. We had been working together for a little over 10 years, and we had a pretty good run. And all of a sudden, he wanted to change the business structure, like how money was divided. So it's kind of like that threw me for a loop because we've always done business this way. Our business is successful. We've been working together well. But now he wanted more money. He wanted me to give him more money.
Oh,
And it did throw me for a loop. And anytime I am working in a situation where a negotiation, whether it's divorce, whether it's my life, with anything. And I learned this years ago when I worked for IBM because I was in sales, and I would say to myself, if this is good for me and it's good for the company and it's good for the client, it should come to fruition. It should sell.
right.
Because whenever you're in a situation where somebody wants something, it has to be a win-win for both parties. Otherwise, it's going to be a win-lose. And you don't want a win-lose. You don't want someone to win and somebody to lose. You want both parties to win.
Absolutely. Same in our business. That's why I love it.
I
Yes.
struggled for months on how to make this a win-win. And after a lot of financial analysis and a lot of soul searching, I came up with an option that served what he wanted, but also served what I wanted. But it took me a while to get there. But it's like we've been doing business this way for 10 years. Why do you want to make a change now? That was a punch. That was a gut punch. And
Wow.
we changed the structure to accommodate what he wanted, but we found or I found a way that it became a win-win, not just a win-lose.
Absolutely. Same in our business. Everybody wants to win. Somebody will not pay as much and somebody will pay more. But in the long run, when you think about it, you really want the house, you love it. I know you don't want to overpay for it, and hopefully we can get there somehow through negotiations because always everything can be negotiated.
Everything can be negotiated.
Everything. Life, love, sex, everything can be negotiated. You just have to be a good negotiator, hopefully.
Well, you also have to be patient. I think that patience.
And you have to have empathy.
Yeah.
I think
And
that's
you have to look at it from both persons' perspectives.
that's right.
You really do, because it's not just about what you want. It's just or what they want. It's like, where can we find that medium that both of us are happy?
We call Amy. We call Amy
That's
Colton,
why
and she
I'm a mediator, because I always like for the win-win.
absolutely. You're such a lovely lady, Amy. I am so glad have had you on this show, Unpack Your Life. Can you give our audience a couple takeaways to walk away with and let it sit with them?
Well, I think ending on this note is appropriate because, again, I think life is about negotiations, whether it's about divorce, or it's about a business partner, or it's your life partner. It's always about negotiation, and you always have to look at things from the other person's perspective as well as yours, and try to come up with a solution where everybody's happy. Does it always work? Generally, yes. You can find that happy median. You may have to give a little to get a little, but you can find that happy median.
I think, being solutionist, because that's what we are in our business. I always try to come to the table in my real estate business as a solutionist.
Mhm.
And that's with mentoring also, because when you look at everything, there's questions being asked. We have to find the solution. And that solution is the happy medium.
Yeah.
And if you're that person that can bring that to the table, you are a very valuable person. That is your value proposition.
Mhm.
And I think that's a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
I am so happy that I had you on Unpack Your Life. You answered quite a few questions. You shared with the audience a lot, things that they need to know. And I want to say, I am so happy that you have survived. Okay. I read that also. I'm so happy that you have survived. And I'm happy that you have decided to do self care.
Mhm.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Amy, tell the audience where can they find you? And hopefully I can have you back on the show because I'm going to talk about you, of course.
Well, you can go to my website, Your Divorce Made Simple. There you can always schedule a meeting with me. I'm happy to talk to you. I always have a free 1 hour consultation that I offer everybody. And I try to give you as much information as possible in that 1 hour. But I'm happy to share any of my experiences and help you through your divorce journey. Or you can go to Forefront Wealth Partners and check out my website there as a financial advisor.
Wonderful. Amy, thank you so much for coming on Unpack Your Life. Guys, you know where to find us. We're on all your podcast platforms, Spotify, Anchor. I think they're one and the same now, Apple. And look for Amy Colton. This has been a very interesting interview, and I think it's something that you all need to hear. Until next time, I'm Jane Bond, and I'll see you guys on Unpack Your Life.